So now open QTP with the web add-in. So it's ready to test the web application now. Let us do a small example here. Here we are having some HTML page which is having a login and password. Let us give some login name. Is some dummy application or a sample application to understand the identification process. Let us give some name, testing. Enter the password. Just record it. Enter the login name as a testing and password is some testing QTP. Now hit this login button. You are navigated to some other page which is a page 1. Just stop recording. So you have these 3 lines generated. Suppose today suppose tomorrow the client come and says he want a modification for the here he don't want the button name to be login. He just want it to be some submit button. He want it to be as renamed as submit. So developers will make the change accordingly to this page. Let us see. Let us close this window. Let us edit the window. Open with the notepad. Just if you know some HTML, if you know just a basic idea of HTML, you can understand this. Otherwise, it's no problem. It's a developer's task. Just they are renaming the thing. It was previously login, just making changes to the HTML code and just putting that as submit. Or else, let us see, they want the name to be as enter. Okay, just code changes were made, and you can see here type equal to submit. This is one property of the button, and type equal to reset. This is another property. These are different properties of the 2 buttons. For enter button, the property type is having a value submit, and for reset button, which you see in your application, the type property is taking a reset value. Just these are different properties. So just save, close it, save. Now if you open the application, you will see a name as enter. Suppose this was a new requirement, changes were made to the requirement and developers had made changes to the application accordingly, but that was not informed, or there was some delay in communication for the testing team. So we try to execute the same script on this enter button. So let us execute it. It is paused at the 3rd one. Because the name has changed, the script should fail, right? Let us see what happens here. Because it's a property value has changed, text property has changed, that script should fail, but it doesn't fail. What happened? Why it doesn't fail? Property value was changed, but it should there's a mismatch, so the script should fail, but it's not getting failed. Let us see what happens. To check what happened, let us open the result summary document. Here it's a results. Select it. In the results, you see some warning message and also an exclamatory symbol shown before the test. Let us expand it. Action summary, browser, page, And here it's showing description mismatch. See here, login description mismatch. Login object description was mismatched. The object was not found using the test object description. Check the object properties. There was a mismatch in the description of the properties, and see here you see a hat symbol showing login smart object identification. There's a mismatch in the property values and smart object identification triggered, and it will show all the details of what actually happened. Reason for mismatch, reason for failure, object not found, original description. Next, alternative description, what happened, how it finally identified the object. Everything is shown here. Let us understand this in detail. Whenever there's a change in the property values, means property value was changed. Here just the text property. Previously it was a login, then it was changed to enter. But it is the same object. Whenever the same object is present in the application but the test failed because of the change in the description properties, then smart object identification triggers. Object is present but only the property values has changed. Then in such cases, smart object identification triggers. What happens actually during this process? Let us study this in detail. First of all, whenever this smart object identification triggers, firstly, it will identify the parent object of the failed object. Identify the parent of the failed object. Firstly, tell me what is the failed object? It is nothing but the login button. So what is the parent of this button? It's nothing but the web table. Hierarchy here, the complete table which you are seeing is nothing but the of the class web table. Now you wrote the web table. Second point is write a list of all the objects of that parent. Objects of that parent. What are the list of objects of that parent? First one is nothing but username, which is a web edit, which belongs to the class web edit. Second one is again password, which belongs to the again the class web edit. Third one is the enter button, which belongs to the class web button. And the fourth object is nothing but reset, which belongs to the class again web button. So prepare the list of the objects of the parent, means list of the child objects of the parent. So return the list. Now it will use another two set of properties which are called base filter properties and optional filter properties. What is meant by base filter and optional filter properties? These are nothing but some set of properties which are important for object identification, means some more important properties. As you are having mandatory properties, these are also the most fundamental and important properties. Next, optional filter properties are OFP. Optional filter properties are some secondary properties like access to properties. So it will take the first base filter property. First base filter property is, let us say, class. So using this first base filter property, it will try to identify the object uniquely from this list of objects. So class property of the failed object is nothing but web button. So it will try to match with this. Here the class property is web edit password. So these were removed from the list. So now the list contains two objects. Again match it. It matched with the enter object and also it will match with the reset. So again your list contains two objects. If your list came down with only one object, then that's all. That is the object you need to identify, or a QTP need to identify. That's done. Suppose again the list is having two, means unique identification is not done with the base filter. Now it will go with the optional filter properties. So coming to this optional filter properties, it will take the first optional filter property. Let us say it takes some name property. Name is nothing but enter or a login. Failed object is login. So name is equal to login. So it will try to compare the name property with this here. So name property here is enter and the name property here is result. So mismatch. Again first property fail. Now it goes to the second property. Next the second property is nothing but type. Type equal to submit for this login button which we have seen in the HTML code. So it will compare that with the properties. So type equal to submit and enter property is also having type equal to submit because that property was not changed. And whereas type equal to reset for the reset button. So here the object was uniquely identified. Here the login object which failed was uniquely identified with the enter button. This was removed because mismatch is there. So likewise, it will eliminate all the objects and it will finally come out with a single object. And hence, the object is identified uniquely by using base filter and optional filter properties. Let us see that in our scenario. See here, the smart object identification mechanism was invoked because there's a mismatch. Smart object identification triggered, and the reason for that triggering is object not found. Next, original description of the failed object. Type equal to submit, name equal to login, and the class property equal to web button, and HTML tag equal to input. So these are the description of the failed object. Now it uses the base filter properties. Using base filter properties, as we have just seen, two objects were identified. And the base filter properties which were used are mic class and HTML tag. Even using mic class itself, it has identified two objects. So now it uses the optional filter property. First property, name equal to login, mismatch. Okay, match with the login here. Yes, this is a enter. This is a old object. So name equal to login. So there is no mismatch. Skip because the new object is having enter, right? So there is a mismatch. Next, coming to the type property. Type property for the enter button is also submit, and enter type equal to is the submit for login button also. So this was used and it was one match was there finally. Because type is equal to reset for the reset button. All the buttons are not having the type property same. Type equal to submit means it is posting some data, it is saving some data. If you click submit button by entering the values and click on submit, the entire data is saved or else posted to the other database. But whereas you click on reset, the entire data is cleared. Means the type property is not submit, but the type property is reset there because it is resetting the data. So the functionality of the two buttons differs. For a submit button, the type property will be submit, whereas for a clear or reset buttons, the type property will be equal to reset. So by using this property, it uniquely identifies the object. And hence, even though the name is different, it matched it with the enter object. And hence, script executed fine, and you navigated to the next page. And these properties, base filter and optional filter properties, will not be saved along with the mandatory and SS2, but it will be stored at some place, a different place internally. Go to tools, object identification. Here you cannot see base filter and optional. And also one more thing you need to remember here is smart object identification will be triggered only if you select this checkbox. I have just selected this, right? Suppose if you unselect this, even though object identification failed, smart object identification will not come into picture. It will come into picture or it will get triggered only if you select this option. And also, if you click on this configure button, you see the two sets here. base filter and optional filter. If you want to configure or add which you want to be base filter, you can do it before executing or recording, so that they will be stored at some different place. Here you cannot see those properties. That is about smart object identification. Suppose normal object identification failed, so it smart object identification triggered. Again, this also failed to uniquely identify the object. Then it uses ordinal identifiers, another property called ordinal identifiers. These ordinal identifiers will be stored in the normal object identification process only. As we have seen, it will store mandatory and assistive. And suppose if after storing this also QTP thinks these are not enough to identify the object uniquely, then it will go to ordinal identifier properties and those will be stored. Those will be stored, that's all. But those will not be used. They will be used only smart object identification also fails. If normal object identification fail, it will not use these properties, but it will go for smart object identification. And once the smart object identification also fails, then only it will go for ordinal identifiers. It is nothing but a different properties, like it's of three types, which is a location based ordinal identifier, index based ordinal identifier, and creation time ordinal identifier. What is meant by this? And the values for this ordinal identifier will be starting from 0, 1 and so on. Similarly, index ordinal identifier will also have values from 0, 1 and so on. Creation time also same. Means you have an option in the object identification to select which or type of ordinal identifier you want to use if required. Suppose you select location. Location ordinal identifier means, suppose you have an agent name, and locational identifier for that will be 0. Means numbering will be given to the objects depending on the position of the object in the application. Because agent name is the first object in the application, so 0 will be the number. Because numbering starts from 1, it will be 1 less than the position it is actually present. It is present at the first position, so number 0. Suppose you have some cancel button at the 4th place, so ordinal identifier value, location ordinal identifier value will be 3 and so on. Similarly, index based ordinal identifier. Here numbering will be given based on the position of the object in the source code. Source code means original code. If suppose they are using Java, so at which position, what is the position of the object? Where is the code? Suppose they have written a code first for the password, then comes the agent name, then comes and so on. Like that numbering will be given. Again numbering starts from 0, 1 and so on. The other one is creation time ordinal identifier, which is applicable only for the web applications. Here numbering will be given depending on the load time of the objects in the application. Suppose you open the application, it says object application is loading. So depending on the object, whichever first is visible or whichever first loads, then the numbering will be given. Suppose if agent name is the 5th object that loaded as a 5th object, then numbering will be given accordingly because it's a 5th object. Means, so numbering will be given like this. For the first object it is 0, second object 1, third object it is 2, fourth object 3, fifth object 4 and so on. So if it is loaded as a 5th object, the ordinal identifier creation time ordinal identifier value will be 4. Here you have ordinal identifier. You can choose what ordinal identifier you want to apply. Suppose index, select it. So if required, if whenever ordinal identifiers are stored, it will be stored based on index ordinal identifier will be stored. all about object identification process and smart object identification process using different set of properties.